right, so today's video is going to be on speeding up workflow and efficiency. Now, some of these tips are going to be cross-platform, as in they could work in Photoshop, they could work inside of Procreate or Illustrator or Krita or whatever program you happen to be using. I'm going to be using Photoshop today, but the first part of this is just kind of a talk. So speeding up your workflow. Yeah, so I got some questions about how do I work faster? How do I work more efficiently? Well, and efficiency is how you speed up. So the number one thing is practice. I mean, that's the biggest part, right? It's no secret. You have to get good at your craft. You need to know your tools primarily, right? So if you don't know your tools, you're going to have a heck of a time dooting around inside your program. You're going to be roadblocked by the lack of knowledge in the tool set itself, all right? And the second is knowing your fundamentals, and both of these really are kind of interchangeable. You could have either one come first, right? But they're both really important. I mean, even if your tool is as simple as a pencil and paper, you have to know how to work a pencil and how to move it across your paper delicately in order to create, good lines as well as nice gradations and shading and so forth, right? So you have to know the tool, no matter what your tool of choice is, and you have to know your art fundamentals, all right? So that means practicing your perspectives, practicing how to shade, practicing just how to draw, sketch and then go to final line, right? Which is an entire lesson or set of lessons unto themselves. This is not like an intro to drawing video. So the next big section, I'll say, is staying organized. All right, stay organized. I've been teaching at the collegiate level for, I guess, about 11 years now, right? And that's one of the biggest problems I see with most students is a complete lack of organization. Students want to get in, they want to draw or paint, they want to start making a thing, but they can't be bothered with things like naming layers and creating clipping masks and setting up your file properly. And those things are really, really important. It's not just important for you to have a consistent workflow, but it's also important for you if you get out in the real world and you're going to be handing these files off to somebody else, okay? Also, when you're dealing with anything like a Procreate or a Photoshop, which is a layer-based drawing program, you can get up into the 100 layers on a single some sort of train rolling past me. You can get up to 100 layers into a single file. And then how do you know what is what if you've not named anything other than new layer, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3? You don't know, all right? So one, clearly name your layers. Use clipping masks. Clipping masks can help you with ground separations. Ground separations include separating your environment into different layers, right? So you have a background, you have your foreground and your middle ground, so foreground, middle ground, and I like to take my character and put them into their own layer as well. And depending on what's going on with that character, I might break the character apart. Like with this particular illustration, the line work anyway, this character has a few different chunks, so you could break this character apart into its own folder with a t-shirt, pants, hat, and then the skin color, boots, each could be their own clipping mask so that you can go in and quickly grab a layer and then paint over top of that, and then grab the next layer and paint over top of that. and not have to worry about blending into others, which is just a workflow. It's a workflow of a million different workflows. So yeah, separating your illustration out into chunks. I've also found that when you work in children's books or any other illustration field, you're frequently going to be asked by art directors or clients to separate out chunks. So if I hand them this entire illustration, let's say that this is one big page for a children's book, you might want to take this character, or maybe just the character's head right here, and maybe turn that into a sticker, or maybe you turn it into a design that you're going to use on an empty page somewhere in the back of the book or the beginning of the book, right? Maybe it's the whole character, maybe it's just the head, maybe it's just the hat, you know, maybe it's just this little silly emoji guy, right? But if you've done your due diligence and separated things out inside of your layers over here, then you're going to be able to come in and chop these pieces out really fast and use those for other applications inside of your workflow. All right, so yeah, good separations, clipping masks, groups. If you look over here, I have this current area, this entire document split up into groups, and everything is named nicely, right? Now this layer 1 I haven't named, but I should name it something that makes sense, like markup, right? Because I'm just coming through here marking this up, right? But I have this overview layer, right? Which right now is inside of an overview folder, which allows me to turn this off and turn this on so I can talk through. But also, I have all of my text layers and this gray background all inside of this one folder overview, right? And then for the actual workflow of this, I have a lines layer. My lines layer is set to multiply because it's on a white background and I don't want the white to interfere. I put a new white background inside of here so that I'm not drawing on transparency, although some people prefer to draw on transparency. You might want to do that. I personally don't like to do that in most cases, unless it's going to be a PNG. For sure, going to be a PNG. So I have a background layer, and then I have a color folder right here that I can open and close, and then I have the background color, and I have Pim, because the character's name is Pim, color. If I didn't know what the character's name was, it might just say boy color, you know, or character color, right? Whatever that might be. All right, and then my lines layer is named lines. It's separated out. It's already turned into a multiply. And if you get used to setting up your files in a particular manner, then you always know what you're coming back to. You always know how your objects are set up. And you can come over here. Often when I see an illustration, something like this, if you're working on a team, I often work on a team where the other artist, one artist does lines, the other artist does color. So when I receive my lines, then I'll throw it into here. I'll make sure that everything is scaled properly. I'll make sure that I set up my document so that I know where all of my bleeds are. So these are all set up at 200 pixels from the edge. You can set them up at whatever makes sense to you. I find my middle horizontally and vertically, right? That way, you know, I always know where those middle grounds are, and I know not to get too close to the edge where things are going to start to clip. Depending on my workflow, I'll actually take this document and increase it in scale by an extra inch or so all the way around, and then I'll draw extra line back in here just to make sure that if I need to move this somewhere in the final setup of the document, you know, in the final book, I can adjust its position without having to worry about there being some sort of white, basically not enough painting, right? So anyway, setting up your layers, naming them properly, allows me to come back over here and find exactly what it is that I am looking for. All right, so that's document setup. Templates. Templates are important. Again, if I know that I'm going to be working on this size document over and over and over again, often what I will do is I'll set up a template that will look basically like this, right? I'll have a blank page, or if I know that I'm going to be starting with a gray background or a tan background, whatever it might be, I'll drop that in here. I'll set up all of my rulers and my guides, and that will be ready to rock and roll. I might have custom guides in here if this is for card art, and those things will already be in here, and I'll come out, I'll do a save as, right? And I'll do save as, and I'll make that a template, and I'll name it accordingly. So it'll be, let's say this is for card art, and I've already changed the file size down to card art size, and I've set up all of these, you know, little portals or windows for the art to sit in and everything. I'll name that out as card template, and usually it'll have references that refer to the actual client that I'm working for or the game that I'm working for. That way I don't get my templates mixed up. So that's another good way to work. All right, so document setup, and let me undo that last thing. I think I just drew on my, I sure did. There we go. Understanding your history, also good, making sure that you're on the right layers. Foreground, middle ground, we talked about this, separating things out. The next is some of your developing a workflow, right? So developing a workflow requires trying new tools and new setups. Now these tools can vary a lot. I don't just mean like a new brush inside of Photoshop, but I mean tools could include things like go try Corel Paint, or don't go try Krita, go try Procreate, go try Photoshop or Illustrator. All those things can be seen as tools, even though they're, you know, applications, but they have a different feel to them that changes the way that you might interface with a program. You might find that you like one better. All right, and we'll talk about some extra tools here in just a second that I really like. Another way to develop workflows is master copies. Okay, master copies are exactly what they sound like. You find somebody who is a master of their craft. Hopefully it's an industry professional or somebody who's, they might be dead now, might not work in the industry, might have retired, whatever. But you find that art and you try to break it down and you try to mimic what they've done, right? Now, depending on the industry professional, tutorials are much more popular these days. So if you can find like a good Gumroad or something along those lines, then often they'll break down their process, their workflow for a particular piece. Take advantage of that. You know, watch the video and try to mimic exactly what they did on perhaps some line work that you've already created, or start something brand new. And it doesn't have to be, when you're trying to figure out a workflow, what you don't need to do is start a brand new piece of epic proportion. You know, they might be working on something that's pretty epic, but you can literally start off, you know, with a box, okay? Whatever that box might look like. You can start off with this box and then say, okay, this particular person's workflow included using the lasso tool in order to grab things and, you know, drop in different colors, and then more lasso tool for gradients and more lasso tool for brush work or whatever. You know, maybe their workflow is a start in black and white and then use gradient maps. There's a million different workflows that exist out there. Yeah, pay attention to what they're selling you. Draw something incredibly simple so that the art itself isn't getting in your way of understanding the workflow that they're presenting. Learn the workflow and then use that workflow on a few different drawings until you feel relatively comfortable with it, and then incorporate that into your staying organized. And you will learn new tools, new workflows as you go that you can then start pulling in to your more epic personal work. All right. Studying the industry professionals. So we talked about that a little bit, but really go out of your way to find YouTube videos or Gumroads or videos on ArtStation or wherever you happen to find videos that break down the workflow, that break down more than just the use of the tool, but how an artist sees the work. Why are they doing the things that they are doing? And there are a million different tutorials out there, and there are a million different artists out there, all trying to share their stuff, all trying to share their workflows, their ideas, but not that many of them actually can break down what's going on up here onto the, well, I was going to say paper, but onto the art, into the video, into the tutorial. So really, really ask yourself while you're watching a video, am I getting a grasp of a tool? If so, and that's what you're there for, great. Or am I getting a grasp of the logic? Like, why are they choosing to use this tool? Why are they choosing to use this workflow? Why are they choosing not to use other things? That's extremely valuable information. Okay, so pay attention to those and then practice with that workflow. So we just talked about that. Digest it and then use it. Make it your own and try to figure out, okay, how am I going to use this particular workflow? What is this workflow good for? Some workflows are great for comic book style. Some workflows are great for children's book. Some workflows are great for concept art, right? Some workflows are great for texture creation, especially if you're doing old school and you're not using something like a substance. Some workflows are just great for like a painterly illustrative look, right? But all these different workflows aren't going to give you the same output, right? But you'll find tools, if you practice with these workflows, you'll find tools and methods of working that will transcend across all uses, right? And those will kind of help you develop a style and a sense of flow that speeds you up greatly because of muscle memory, right? If you've done a thing a million times, your hand knows what it's doing without your brain having to think too hard about it. You just know, okay, I need to make, maybe I come in here and I look at this guy and I immediately go, okay, I need to make a foreground, middle ground, background layer. So I come down here and I would hit 1, 2, 3 on my layers, you know. So I would just go, okay, 1, 2, 3, and I would say, I'd name, double click this one, I would name it foreground, I would double click that one, middle ground, double click that one. Maybe name it background, obviously. So background, middle ground, foreground in that order. And then I would look and say, okay, I need something for my character. So I would maybe have 4 layers if I wanted to go about that direction, right? And I can just name them and start locking these when I'm not using them. And then when I am using them, unlock it and rock and roll. All right. So yeah, know your tool, know your workflow. All right. So hopefully this portion of it helps considerably as far as the how-to side of things. And I'm going to come back in just a little bit and give you a video on specific tools to help develop some kind of workflow and work methodologies that have helped me speed things up, as it were. Okay? So I'm going to pause this for just a second so that it's multiple videos, and then we'll come back in just a bit.